how exciting is that to be stood here right in front of this world iconic place, the Eiffel Tower in Paris. Now, when it first arrived, it was controversial. Now, of course, a much loved treasure. The similarities are complete, are they not, to my own good self? But today, on this edition of Dom's Diary Live in Paris, we're not so much concerned with the life buzzing all around. It's more the memories of those who have passed. And I'm going to take us to a very, very famous, a world famous burial site where one or two celebrities in. Come on, let's go. This is the famous Père Lachaise, the cemetery in Paris, where the great and the good, the celebrities of yesteryear, are all housed in their little tombs here. We're going to go and see some of them. What I love about the way the French bury their dead is they don't just slab a tombstone on their grave, they give them a little house. And we're going to see loads of them as we travel around here. But right in here, you can see this is really popular. There's a very good reason. Come with, this is good. Now I'm going to keep my voice down a little bit because this is the grave of Jim Morrison, and people come here for their own special reflections, not least myself. I've been here many times. There is a YouTube video, by the way, quite recently. The man's passed away now, but Ray Manzarek came here, and I think with Robbie Kruger or John Densmore, I forget which, they came here to pay their respects to Jim Morrison. And here's the grave, obviously lovingly nurtured, with lots of flowers and photographs. And there used to be a famous statue of an angel here, but sadly that got stolen a few years ago. And you can tell by the fencing all around, this is a very popular part of Père Lachaise. And I think one of the reasons why Jim Morrison died in 1971, but one of the reasons why I think him and his music and the music of the Doors endures is because it carries a kind of enduring relevance as an art force, really. And for me, and this is the guy who was a child in the punk rock years, there's a sort of menace about the Doors music which I think maintains its kind of relevance to where we are now. So over 50 years since sadly Jim died, famously in the 27 Club here in Paris, and that's why he never made it back home to America. But if you don't know what I'm saying, do listen to the Doors music, because you've got in there, you know, Riders on the Storm, The End, When the Music's Over. These are extraordinary tracks that, as I say, carries real significance to us all these years later after they were first recorded. So looking at Jim's grave, it is the lyrics of The End. This is the end, my only friend, my beautiful friend, the end. And in that song, he goes positively Oedipal. And it's a bit complex. It's a little bit worrying, actually. But it's beautiful, hypnotic music with that Ray Manzarek organ behind it. It's sumptuous, it draws you in. It's a bit threatening. I love it. God bless you. So continuing the walk through the graveyard here, and this is, I think, my 5th or 6th visit to this amazing part of Paris. But I've never noticed this before, and some friends of mine picked this up. And these two statues, edifices, memorials commemorate the loss of life in the concentration camps. And of course, France was occupied in the Second World War, and a lot of people would have been lost their lives, really, sent to these concentration camps. A nice little detail down here, you can see the cutting through, and that is actually from a quarry where the forced labour was used as part of the war effort, and used to the point of death. It was really horrendous experiences for people, and both these are memorials to those who have died. And in here are some of the ashes from those who were exterminated underneath these rocks from the quarries. And let's go over here, because there's another nice detail. I'm not sure how to pronounce this name. Mauthausen, maybe, I don't know. That was, I would think, one of the camps. And there's some pretty grim statistics here. And there's no question about it. For the people who put this memorial up, the horrors, the crimes against humanity are absolutely associated with Adolf Hitler. But the detail, look, this stepped approach to the memorial, I think people have come along and put their pebbles on to maybe remember somebody special, and they go up the side here, rather lovely. But here, this is what actually drew my attention over here, was wondering what this extraordinary sculpture is about. Clearly somebody carrying the burdens, and as I say, it caused me to stop and pause and find out a little of why these are here. And down here, I'm imagining this is the equivalent of the poppy wreaths that you have in Britain at that Sunday in November. Obviously the colours of France there. So one of the things about coming here is every time you find out something new, something else to draw your eye in. But now we're going to go to the great artist himself, to Oscar Wilde. And here we are on this boulevard, I suppose, running through the graveyard, coming down all these tombs here, and then here it is, this dramatic sculpture by Epstein, and underneath we'll see the words Oscar Wilde. Nice simple inscription here. Now I've been here many times over the last 30 years, and every time I come here there's something different about it. So when I first came here in 1986, this tomb was open to touching, and then a few years later I came back and it was covered in kisses. That obviously threatens the integrity of the tomb. So then they put up a sort of perspex surrounding up, and that was when I was last here in 2017. Then people would kiss the perspex surrounding. Now they're kind of really upgraded, and this is obviously a much more cleanable item, and it gives us access to the tomb. And here is a little notice that tells us to be respectful of this tomb and this space. And it's also saying that the maintenance of this tomb, which is, I would think, an international, a global point of destination, a shrine in reverence to the wonderful Oscar, but it's his own family that pay for this, and I think it's quite expensive. His children, Cyril and Vivian, took their mother's name because in the context of the day, Wilde was utterly disgraced, and so at the very time, his reputation recovered very quickly to the point of this elevated status that he's enjoyed for as long as I can remember. But one of them actually died in the trenches of the First World War, and the other one, I can't remember which one, went on to Father Merlin Holland, who I think is still with us and has been in charge of his grandfather's literary estate for all these years. This extraordinary sculpture by Epstein was commissioned in 1914, so just about time for the sort of the disgrace of Oscar Wilde, who was very publicly humiliated, quite obviously, after his 3 trials. And his literary agent was Robert Ross. Many years later it was revealed that Robert Ross was one of his great loves. And so through an unknown donation at the time, they had the money to build this amazing sculpture here, and provides a really suitable edifice for the great name of Oscar Wilde to sort of be here in eternity, I suppose. It's in Paris because he died in Paris. After he was released from prison, he came over to Paris, lived in exile really. In pecuniary, he I think he said he would die as he had lived, beyond his means. His wit, of course, surviving to the end. In fact, indeed, on his deathbed, he was arguing with his wallpaper. And he says, one of us has got to go. And it was Oscar himself who was transported out and eventually finds his final resting place here. I often ask myself when I come to this amazing place, and as I have done many times before, what is it about Wilde, Oscar the artist, that appeals to me? And actually, he was an artist. He wrote many great plays, wonderful poems. He lived the life of an artist. He was a great creative. But for me, it's the incredible generosity of him as an individual and the charm of the man. You know, he could charm in a very genuine way people back to health. There is that famous episode when he was walking in Chicago on one of his American tours, and he was mugged essentially by 3 Native Americans at knife point. And he not only persuaded them not to mug him, but he then persuaded them to buy him a drink into the bargain. And that to me is what is so lovely about him, a very generous man. And what he kind of got up to in his private life is of little concern to me, although I understand why that is of huge importance to many people, even in the current generation. But often when I come here, I find, just as we've seen down at Jim Morrison, just people in quiet reflection. And last time I was here, in 2017, I talked to a guy who was just standing here, and he was kind of searching for the inner questions and answers to what he'd been pondering for years, and he chose to come here to kind of figure it all out. And what a fine idea that is. I always love coming here. Coming here on this beautiful sunny spring day in Paris is an absolute bonus. But come here and remember one of the greatest people, in my view, that's ever lived in his final resting place is such a privilege and huge fun. I love doing this. But thinking of Vivian and Cyril, Oscar Wilde would of course been a wonderful storyteller for bed night stories when they were small children. And one day he goes into their bedroom to wish them a good night, and they asked for a story, and they said, Daddy, what do you dream of? And of course, being Oscar Wilde, he went into wonderful descriptions of exotic Indian Maharajas with diamond-encrusted turbans of fantastic colour ranges, and elephants who had exotic little houses on their backs, and all these wonderful descriptions of everything that is sumptuous and exotic about the world as he saw it. But he sensed on this occasion that his storytelling wasn't quite finding its mark, and so one of the sons, he said to, well, tell me, Cyril, for instance, tell me, Cyril, what is it you dream of? Daddy, I dream of pigs.